It was a humid and rather languid summer afternoon in London, the sort that made the curtains of our Baker Street rooms hang heavy and motionless, as if exhausted by their own weight. I found myself seated opposite my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, who was engrossed in a monograph on African tribal poisons that had arrived from the Royal Colonial Society only the previous night. Though accustomed to his wide range of interests, I could not ignore the curiosity that uncoiled within me each time he delved into yet another obscure subject. Perhaps, I thought, he was preparing for some unknown investigation. Or perhaps, given his peculiar temperament, he simply wished to guard his restless mind from the creeping threat of boredom.
Watson. You are gazing as though I had transformed into some curious exotic exhibit at the British Museum. If there is a question lingering in that mind of yours, you might do me the kindness of voicing it instead of letting it rattle about like an unsecured carriage wheel.
Holmes, you misjudge me. I was simply wondering why you find yourself buried in treatises on African toxins. I confess the subject seems a trifle remote from our usual London affairs.
Remote, yes. Irrelevant, certainly not. Knowledge, my dear Watson, is never remote to the mind that knows how to classify it. The universe is a vast cabinet of curiosities, and one never knows which drawer may be required at any moment.
Is still, Holmes, one might assume a peaceful afternoon could be spent without fear of sudden intrigue.
Assume nothing, Watson. Peace is merely the interval before the next disturbance.
Holmes had barely concluded this remark when the sudden and sharp rap of the downstairs bell jolted the stillness of our rooms. Mrs. Hudson's surprised exclamation drifted upward, followed by the rapid footsteps of someone ascending the stairs with urgent purpose. Holmes raised a single eyebrow, a subtle gesture I had come to interpret as the confirmation of his own prophetic remark.
You see, Watson, one must never tempt fate by speaking of peaceful afternoons.
A moment later, our visitor burst into the room, a tall, somewhat angular gentleman with the complexion of a man recently returned from warmer climates. His attire bore traces of hurried travel, and in his trembling hands he clutched a small wooden travel cage draped in a silk cloth. Even through the fabric, I could sense the faint shifting of something alive within.
Mr. Holmes, thank heavens you are in. I was told that if any man in London could prevent a catastrophe, it would be you. I beg of you, accept my apologies for the intrusion, but I have had no peace these past 48 hours.
Pray calm yourself, sir. Holmes at your service, and this is my friend and chronicler, Dr. Chronicler. John Watson, may I ask your name and the cause of this evident distress?
My name is Captain Reginald Harrington of the colonial forces stationed on the Gold Coast. And this cursed creature has brought nothing but misery since I left Africa.
The captain removed the silk cloth from the cage, revealing a strikingly vivid parrot with emerald feathers, a fiery patch of scarlet at its crown, and unnervingly bright eyes. The bird regarded us with an intelligence that was almost unnerving, tilting its head as though listening to the conversation.
This is Kimbu, an African grey-breasted parrot, a gift or rather an inheritance of sorts from a local chieftain who died under violent circumstances. Before his death, he pressed the bird into my hands and muttered something about it being the key to the injustice. Since my return to London, I have been followed, threatened, and nearly run down at the docks. And last night, someone attempted to break into my residence, ignoring all valuables and searching only for this bird.
Fascinating. And what, pray tell, does the bird do that commands such a determined pursuit?
It speaks, Mr. Holmes, or rather, it repeats a phrase in the chieftain's native language. The locals believed the bird had witnessed a crime. I dismissed it as superstition until the threats began.
Holmes leaned forward, his piercing grey eyes glinting with unmistakable interest, the fingers of his steepled hands pressing together with the impatience of a mind already assembling possibilities.
Watson, observe the plumage. No ordinary African parrot. Its species is known for remarkable mimicry. Captain, repeat the phrase it utters.
I cannot, Mr. Holmes. The language is unfamiliar and the pronunciation eludes me. But perhaps Kimbu?
The captain tapped the cage gently. The parrot fluffed its feathers, glanced suspiciously around the room, and then croaked a guttural series of syllables, each pronounced with eerie clarity. The sound lingered with an unsettling effect, as though conveying some grave warning rather than a mere echo of human speech. Holmes, I cannot fathom what that means. Have you any notion?
Several, Watson, though none yet verified. Captain Harrington, when precisely did the threats begin?
2 nights after my ship docked. At first, anonymous notes slipped under my door, then whispered warnings on the street. And last evening, the attempted break in. I have every reason to believe someone is desperate to silence this bird.
Or retrieve what the bird represents. The thief ignored other valuables, you say? Then this is no random intimidation. This is a targeted pursuit driven by knowledge or fear of what the parrot knows.
I observed Holmes rise from his chair and move toward the window with the graceful precision of a ending feline. He opened the curtain slightly and scanned the street below.
Watson, do you note the black, mustached fellow leaning against the lamppost on the opposite side of the street? No? Observe carefully. His boots bear fresh mud, inconsistent with London's pavements, and his coat shows the red dust of the western docks. He has looked up at our windows 3 times since the captain entered.
Holmes, I swear the man seems inconspicuous to my eyes.
Naturally. Observation, Watson, is seeing. Deduction is understanding what one sees. You must train your mind not merely to look, but to perceive.
I promise you, Holmes, I am always trying.
A commendable effort. Now, Captain Harrington, has anyone besides yourself handled this parrot since your departure from Africa?
Only the chieftain's son shortly before he passed, and a merchant at the docks who helped secure the cage. But neither could have instigated all this.
We shall see. Tell me of the chieftain. You said he died violently?
Yes, an ambush. His tent was raided. Many believed he was murdered by a rival tribe. Others whispered of white traders seeking to control ivory routes. But before he died, he insisted Kimbu had seen the true killer. He was half delirious, but intensely insistent.
A witness, but not a human one. Remarkable.
Holmes turned to me with that rare, electric spark of excitement which indicated that a case worthy of his intellect had at last arrived.
Watson, I believe our peaceful afternoon has concluded. Captain Harrington, allow me to assure you, you have come to the correct place, but you must not return home tonight.
Then where shall I go?
You will remain here at Baker Street. Watson and I shall keep watch. Whoever pursues this bird will not abandon their efforts quietly.
Holmes, you cannot mean to invite danger into our chambers?
Watson, danger is already waiting outside, and it would be inhospitable to keep it lingering in the street, or better to confront it on ground we control.
Holmes then approached the cage and addressed the parrot directly.
Now then, my feathered informant, let us hear your secret again. Speak, Kimbu, and let us unmask the shadow that follows you.
The parrot stared at Holmes with an uncanny intensity, then repeated the strange phrase, its voice resonating through the room like a cryptic prophecy. And at that moment, though I did not yet understand why, a chill crept up my spine, warning me that this case would draw us deep into a perilous mystery that stretched far beyond the borders of London. The evening deepened into one of those heavy London nights where the fog presses against the window pane, uneased like a living creature, muffling the outside world until it seems a distant dream. Holmes had extinguished all but one lamp, allowing shadows to settle along the edges of the room in silent, watchful folds. Captain Harrington sat stiffly on the sofa, his wary eyes flickering toward the cage each time the parrot shifted its weight or rustled its feathers. As for myself, I could not deny a growing apprehension, though I attempted to conceal it beneath the surface of calm professionalism expected of a medical man.
Watson, I trust you have loaded your service revolver. I suspect we shall need a deterrent, though ideally not a fatal one.
Holmes, the pistol is prepared, though I sincerely hope its presence proves unnecessary.
Hope? Watson, is a luxury one may carry in one's inside pocket. Prudence, however, I keep posted.
Holmes moved with his characteristic quiet precision, checking the locks on the windows, the latches on the doors, and even the faint tracks of footprints upon our wooden floorboards, although I could hardly imagine how such details would assist him, considering that no one had yet entered. Still, his thoroughness was oddly reassuring.
Mr. Holmes, I cannot shake the fear that Kimbu's presence here puts you both in danger. I did not intend to entangle you in a colonial feud.
Captain Harrington, I assure you, danger is an old acquaintance of ours. It visits frequently and seldom requires an invitation.
The parrot let out a soft whistle, then hopped twice on its perch. Its beady eyes glimmered with that same inexplicable intelligence that had unsettled me earlier. Holmes leaned toward the cage, observing the bird with the scientist's fascination mixed with the detective's sharp suspicion.
Watson, do you recall the phrase it spoke earlier?
Holmes, the sounds were so foreign to my ear that I fear I could not replicate a single syllable.
Just so. Yet the pattern of intonation was unmistakably deliberate. There is information encoded there, not a mere mimicry, but a recounting. And that is what our adversary fears.
Holmes, surely you do not believe the parrot actually witnessed a murder?
Believe? No, Watson. Deduce? Yes. The bird is a recorder, an observer, a living phonograph of the bush. If the chieftain died in its presence, whatever words were last spoken, whatever argument transpired, those may be preserved in this creature's memory.
Mr. Holmes, the chieftain's dying words were frantic. He spoke of betrayal, of a secret hidden in plain sight. I thought it the ramblings of a delirious man.
Delirium may veil truth, Captain, but it does not negate it.
A sudden tapping at the window startled Harrington, who leapt to his feet with the agitation of a man long pursued. Holmes, however, merely gestured for quiet, his expression sharpening like a blade being honed.
Watson, step slightly to the left. Captain, do not approach the window. Our guest below seems restless.
Forcing myself to steady my nerves, I shifted position. Holmes slipped silently to the curtain and parted it but a fraction. Okay? He observed for a long moment, then allowed the drape to fall back into place.
Our lamppost friend is still at his post, and now accompanied by another. The situation escalates.
Holmes, are they merely watching or preparing?
Both. A man who watches too long will eventually act to justify his vigilance.
Holmes, if they mean to retrieve the bird, then we must.
We shall do nothing hasty, Captain. The game of pursuit and concealment is one I prefer to play on my own terms.
It was then that Kimbu suddenly erupted into a flurry of agitation, wings thrashing against the bars of the cage. Boom. The parrot's eyes darted widely about the room, as though sensing some unseen presence creeping closer.
Ah, the mood shifts. Soup!
Holmes, what does this mean?
It means, Watson, that Kimbu is accustomed to danger and recognizes when it draws near.
I moved instinctively closer to Harrington, who seemed ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. Holmes, however, remained notably calm as he crossed the room and extinguished the last lamp. The chamber fell into near total darkness, with only the faint shimmering glow of the street lamps filtering through the fog outside. Sink!
Gentlemen, stand still. Allow your eyes to adjust. A dark room is less inviting to trespassers and far more revealing to those who know how to listen.
Several tense minutes passed in silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of wings as Kimbu shifted nervously. Then from somewhere just beyond our door came the unmistakable sound of a quiet footfall, not the polite step of Mrs. Hudson, but the careful predatory tread of someone attempting to mask their presence. My pulse quickened, and I cast a glance toward Holmes, though the dimness rendered him little more than a silhouette.
Watson, revolver ready, but do not fire unless absolutely necessary. A wounded intruder answers more questions than a dead one.
Understood, Holmes.
Dear God, they've come for me.
Silence, Captain. Your fear is louder than your voice.
The door latch gave a subtle metallic click, slow, deliberate, a gloved hand formed a shadow against the glass panel above the handle. Holmes moved like a phantom, placing himself to the side of the entryway, invisible to anyone entering.
Watson, the moment they cross the threshold, illuminates the room. Harrington, remain behind me.
Before I could reply, the intruder forced the door open. A hooded figure slipped inside, his movements swift, practiced, and utterly silent. Another shadow loomed behind him, obscured in the corridor. They scanned the darkness as though attempting to locate the cage.
The bird, it must be here. Find it before he wakes.
I nearly laughed aloud at the absurdity of their assumption that Holmes would be asleep during such a moment. But I contained myself, waiting for the signal.
Now, Watson. Hmm.
I struck the gas lamp. The room erupted into sudden brightness and the intruders recoiled as though seared by its radiance. Gone. One attempted to flee, but Holmes seized him with astonishing speed, forcing him to the ground. Second intruder, the one from the corridor, made a desperate grab for the parrot's cage. Stop! Step away from the bird.
Out of my way, doctor. The bird speaks death.
Watson, restrain him.
I lunged forward, knocking the man off balance. He stumbled, overturning a side table with a clash. Kimbu shrieked violently, flapping its wings in terror.
We cannot let the creature live. It knows. It knows.
Knows what, my good fellow? And whom does it incriminate?
You cannot make me speak. You cannot.
Holmes was already upon him, pinning his arm behind his back with precise efficiency. Harrington, trembling but determined, stepped forward as though ready to assist.
Holmes, is he one of the traders? I recognize the accent. These men followed us in Africa.
Indeed, Captain. Quite the persistent sort. Dow! I am Mel!
The first intruder struggled beneath Holmes's grip but was firmly subdued. The second glared at me with wild, fevered eyes that practically glowed with desperation.
If the bird repeats the chieftain's final accusation, we are doomed. All of us. Oh!
Fascinating. So, the chieftain named his murderer, did he?
Never. I said nothing of the sort.
On the contrary, you said quite enough.
Holmes turned to me, his expression filled with that unmistakable spark of triumph.
Watson, I believe our case has found its first solid footing. Bind them securely. There is much to learn, and dawn will bring no shortage of revelations.
And indeed, as I tied the intruders with my medical bandages, the sturdiest material at hand, I could not help but feel that we had only scratched the surface of a far deeper and darker secret. Kimbu croaked softly from his cage, as though confirming the unsettling truth that more danger yet lay ahead. The first glow of dawn crept through the fog like a timid intruder seeking permission to enter London. Its pale light softened the outlines of Baker Street, dimly illuminating the aftermath of the previous night's chaos. Our two mysterious assailants sat bound to sturdy chairs in the corner of our sitting room, glowering beneath their lowered brows. Captain Harrington paced near the hearth with restless energy, glancing periodically at the parrot's cage as though expecting it to erupt into further calamity. Holmes, in stark contrast to all of us, appeared invigorated. The night's events had clearly sharpened his intellect, like the whetstone that awakens a dormant blade.
Watson, kindly pour yourself a cup of coffee. You appear as though sleep has become a stranger to you.
Holmes, after wrestling ruffians, guarding exotic birds, and anticipating further danger, I must say rest did not come easily.
Nonsense, Watson. You performed admirably. A lesser man might have fainted during last night's excitement, yet here you stand, only slightly bedraggled.
I appreciate the compliment, though I suspect it is delivered with your customary irony.
Not at all. Even iron gates require hinges. You keep our endeavors balanced.
Harrington approached Holmes with a determined expression, his military posture stiff or tinged with vulnerability.
Mr. Holmes, we must question them. Surely they will reveal who sent them and what they seek to prevent the world from learning.
Patience, Captain. A hurried interrogation yields tangled answers. A careful one unravels truth.
The parrot, Kimbu, voiced a sharp squawk, a sound halfway between alarm and impatience as though objecting to the delay of its own tail. Holmes turned toward the cage with the air of a conductor addressing his soloist.
Kimbu has a part to play, but its performance must be properly orchestrated.
Holmes crossed to the corner where the two captives remained. He studied their faces, rough, weather-beaten, and marked with the unmistakable signs of colonial hardship. Their clothing bore traces of red dust, and one man's boots betrayed recent exposure to African soil.
Gentlemen, you arrived in London less than a week ago. Judging from your attire and the distinctive dust on your boots, dust native to the region near the Volta River basin, you were very recently on the Gold Coast.
You know nothing, detective. You cannot prove where we come from.
I do not prove, I deduce, and deduction requires only what is evident to any man with eyes and intellect in equal proportion. Unfortunately, you appear in short supply of both.
I could not suppress a small smile. Holmes delivered such barbs with a precision that rivaled his Vai, or Lin Bao.
Now, let us discuss matters plainly.
We will say nothing, nothing at all.
You already have. Last night, in your desperation, you uttered the most damning clue of all, that the parrot knows the truth of a murder. I require no confession from you. The bird will speak.
The bird speaks nonsense, nonsense and curses.
Curses? No. Linguistic fragments of a dying tongue? Quite possibly.
Holmes moved to his desk and retrieved a thick, leather-bound volume, a dictionary of regional Afric, and dialects, the Hassival of which he had apparently studied with great interest over the years. Harrington looked astonished.
Holmes, I had no idea you were so familiar with those languages.
A detective never knows which tongue might whisper the final clue. Watson, bring the cage closer.
I lifted Kimbu's cage with care, though the bird's sharp gaze made me feel as though I were being judged for every movement. As I positioned the cage on the table before Holmes, Kimbu ruffled his feathers with a haughty sort of dignity.
Now then, Kimbu, let us hear what you have stored away.
Holmes tapped lightly on the cage. Kimbu straightened and uttered a low, rhythmic phrase, the same guttural sequence we had heard the previous day, though now with more force and urgency. Holmes repeated the sounds under his breath, comparing them to the entries in the dictionary.
Watson, listen closely. These syllables correspond to a dialect used in the northern territories, rarely spoken outside certain chieftain clans.
Can you translate it, Holmes?
Almost. The phrase is fragmented, but the structure is unmistakable. It sounds like, "He who comes with white hands brings death." Or possibly, "The white-handed man kills the chief."
White-handed? You mean a foreigner, a European?
Precisely. And the phrase is repeated with remarkable consistency, suggesting it was spoken at a moment of urgency, likely during or immediately before the chieftain's death.
Lies. The bird lies. Parrots do not know truth.
Parrots know what they hear, and they repeat what haunts them. This bird was present during the murder, or, at the very least, near enough to hear the accusation.
Holmes leaned closer to the captives. For a moment, silence stretched thin and taut across the room like the string of Holmes's violin.
Tell me, who among the colonial traders is known by the name White Hand? A nickname, perhaps? A moniker used by locals?
We know no such man.
Another lie. Your reaction is too swift, too rehearsed. I will ask again. Who bears that name?
You think us fools, detective? You think we will betray our employer so easily?
I do not require your cooperation. The evidence will reveal itself in due course.
Holmes returned to the parrot and tapped the cage again. Kimbu repeated the phrase, then added another set of syllables I had not heard before, harsher, more clipped, delivered with a strange trembling of the bird's wings.
Ah, there is more. There is more. The second phrase, yes, it resembles the local word for ivory and perhaps river, hand, betrayal.
Holmes, could he be naming a location? A route?
More likely describing an illicit trade operation, one that someone wished to keep hidden, perhaps even from the chieftain himself.
The captive stiffened, confirming Holmes's suspicion without uttering a single word. Holmes observed them with the detached calm of a surgeon watching involuntary reflexes.
There it is. Your guilt betrays you before your tongues do.
You understand nothing of the politics of the Gold Coast, detective. Nothing.
On the contrary, I understand that greed knows no language barriers and murder recognizes no borders.
Comrades. Just then, Mrs. Hudson entered, clutching a telegram in her flustered hands.
Mr. Holmes, this arrived for you just now. The boy said it came from the Foreign Office. Urgent.
Thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
Holmes snapped open the telegram with swift fingers, scanned its contents, and his expression hardened like wet clay left in the sun.
Gentlemen, we have confirmation. The Foreign Office reports that a Lieutenant Colonel Rupert Ashcombe, known among the locals as the White Hand, arrived in London 2 days before Captain Harrington. He is wanted for questioning in connection with unauthorized ivory operations.
Ashcombe. Impossible. He was respected, decorated.
Decorations have often concealed darker stains. It appears we now know the identity of the man our intruders serve.
You know nothing. You cannot reach him. He is protected.
Protected, perhaps, but not invisible, and certainly not innocent.
The parrot screeched loudly, hopping back and forth on its perch. And you! As though urging us to move without delay. Holmes stroked his chin thoughtfully. And Dathla, fully.
Watson, Harrington, prepare yourselves. The time has come to confront Lieutenant Colonel Ashcombe. The final act of this drama will not unfold here in Baker Street. No, it will unfold wherever Ashcombe hides his secrets.
And though I could not yet foresee the dangers awaiting us, I felt the unmistakable thrill of the chase warming my blood. The mystery had deepened, and Holmes, with the parrot Kimbu as our unlikely guide, was ready to pursue its darkest thread. London's midday fog had thinned by the time we reached Blackfriars Wharf, yet a chill wind swept across the river with the insistence of an unwelcome reminder that danger lingered close. Holmes strode ahead of Captain Harrington and myself with purposeful haste, his long coat billowing like a banner heralding the charge of a lone general. Kimbu, the African parrot, accompanied us within a larger travel gauge, pursed indignantly and occasionally muttering the ominous fragments it had recited in Baker Street. That creature's uncanny repetition felt increasingly like the refrain of a prophecy, drawing us nearer to its fulfillment.
Watson, keep a sharp eye on our surroundings. Ashcombe is not the sort to sit idly when his schemes are threatened.
Holmes, I dare say that after last night's encounter, I am unlikely to miss even the rustling of a rat.
Even rats can be deceiving, Watson. Many a villain is passed unnoticed because he disguised himself less as a predator and more as a pest.
Harrington carried the cage with both hands, his military bearing stiffened with anxiety.
Mr. Holmes, are you certain Ashcombe will be here? The Foreign Office said he was staying at a club near Whitehall.
Men whose hands are stained with betrayal seldom linger in respectable places. Trust me, Captain, the docks conceal more truth than London's parlours ever will.
The wharf was a sprawling mess of crates, tar-stained ropes, and the pungent scent of the Thames. Labourers shouted, police groaned, gulls circled overhead with shrill cries, the kind of commotion in which a fugitive might vanish entirely, or from which an ambush might easily spring.
There, the warehouse marked with the ivory emblem. Discretion was never Ashcombe's strong suit.
Holmes pointed toward a large structure of soot-blackened brick. Its faded signage depicted a tusk-like shape partially obscured by grime. Even from a distance, a sense of illicit secrecy emanated from it. Harrington's jaw tightened as the sight stirred some painful recognition.
That symbol, Holmes? Holmes. That's the mark used by the traders suspected of smuggling ivory along the Volta. I encountered it years ago during an inquiry.
Precisely. Ashcombe believes himself clever, but his confidence is merely arrogance in disguise.
The three of us approached cautiously. The warehouse doors were ajar, allowing a thin beam of sunlight to pierce the otherwise murky interior. Holmes motioned for silence as he stepped inside. I followed, revolver in hand, while Harrington trod the cage with measured steps.
Watson, remain alert. If Ashcombe is here, he will not greet us with hospitality.
The interior of the warehouse was dim, with rows of crates stacked like the rows of some crude cathedral lit only by flickering shafts of dusty light. The air carried the bitter smell of preservatives, wood shavings, and something else, something metallic, though faint. Holmes, do you smell that? It's iron.
Blood, Watson. Very faint, but unmistakable.
Blood? Whose blood?
Possibly the blood of anyone who has gotten too close to Ashcombe's secrets.
As though on cue, a soft clatter echoed in the far corner, followed by the scurrying of hurried footsteps. Holmes dashed forward with feline swiftness, brushing aside a crate and revealing a narrow passageway leading deeper into the warehouse.
Come, the quarry flees.
We pursued him into a low-lit corridor lined with more crates, some marked with official stamps, others bearing illicit symbols of trade networks. Harrington nearly tripped on a discarded length of rope but recovered quickly.
Holmes, the markings. Some of these crates came directly from Ashanti territories.
Precisely why Ashcombe cannot allow us to leave.
Suddenly, a voice rang out from the shadows ahead, smooth, commanding, tinged with the confidence of a man accustomed to unquestioned authority.
Mr. Holmes, you have a talent for meddling where your presence is neither wanted nor wise.
A figure emerged from behind a crate, tall, impeccably dressed, with silvering temples and a cold smile that suggested both charm and cruelty. His boots bore the same red dust stains Holmes had previously noted, a telltale sign of recent travel to the very African territories at the heart of this affair.
Lieutenant Colonel Rupert Ashcombe, or rather the White Hand, as you are known to those whose trust you exploited.
A childish nickname by superstitious natives, nothing more.
On the contrary, it is a title earned and won. The chieftain spoke as he lay dying.
Nonsense. You cannot expect me to tremble before the ravings of a dying man.
Kimbu, as though recognizing the man's voice with instinctive dread, had flapped violently within the cage, shrieking its haunting phrase. Harrington struggled to maintain his grip.
Holmes, the bird, it's terrified of him.
An honest witness will often display more courage than a deceitful man.
Holmes, I advise you to leave immediately. That bird was never meant to survive.
As Ashcombe stepped closer, I noticed the glint of a revolver concealed beneath his coat, its barrel catching a sliver of light.
Watson, to your left, he's reaching for the weapon.
Before I could react, Ashcombe drew the revolver and fired. At these, sir, the shot rang out with deafening force, splintering a crate inches from my head. Holmes, he means to kill us.
Watson, flank him.
Ashcombe, for God's sake, stand down.
Oh, I warned you, Harrington. Some secrets are worth any price.
Holmes leapt sideways with remarkable agility, closing the distance between himself and Ashcombe. Another shot fired, ricocheting dangerously close to Harrington. Kimbu screeched with such ferocity that the warehouse seemed to echo with the chieftain's dying accusation.
Watson, now.
I lunged forward, grabbing Ashcombe's weapon hand and wrenching it aside. The revolver discharged a final time, the bullet embedding itself harmlessly in the wooden floor. Though Ashcombe fought with surprising strength, delivering a brutal blow to my ribs that sent me stumbling backward.
You fools! You have no idea what this bird knows.
On the contrary, Ashcombe, I know precisely what it knows.
Holmes seized Ashcombe's arm with expert precision, twisting it until the revolver clattered to the ground. The colonel groaned in pain, but continued to struggle. Harrington dropped the cage and rushed to assist, tackling Ashcombe around the waist.
You murdered him. You murdered the chieftain.
He would have exposed everything. I had no choice.
There is always a choice. Yours was greed, and the blood of an innocent man stains your hands.
With combined effort, we pinned Ashcombe to the ground. Holmes secured his arms behind his back with a length of rope scavenged from a nearby crate. The defeated colonel lay gasping, his once imperious expression replaced by the hollow gaze of a man whose empire had crumbled.
Holmes, if you only knew what fortune lies in those crates, what power!
Fortune built upon suffering is no fortune at all. It is theft and murder.
Kimbu, trembling but alive, spoke again in its guttural dialect, the chieftain's dying words reverberating through the warehouse with haunting authority. The final phrase rang out like a verdict.
There, Watson, the bird delivers its testimony.
Holmes, thank you. I thought this darkness would follow me to the grave.
Justice may travel slowly, Captain, but it arrives eventually.
Holmes stood, straightened his coat, and glanced down at Ashcombe with a final, measured gaze.
Watson, alert Inspector Lestrade and ensure the Foreign Office receives a detailed account. This warehouse is a trove of evidence, enough to unravel the entire ivory conspiracy.
At once, Holmes.
And have someone collect this courageous bird. Kimbu has honored the memory of its master with remarkable fidelity.
As he stepped into the light of the now bustling wharf, I felt the palpable weight of the morning settle into my bones. Fatigue, relief, and the unmistakable awe that always followed one of Holmes's triumphs. The case was far from concluded in the courts, but the truth had been unveiled, and Kimbu, perched proudly now, seemed almost triumphant. The fog had returned by the time Holmes and I left Blackfriars Wharf with Ashcombe safely in Lestrade. Ease custody. Yet I felt as though a different fog, that of disbelief and lingering dread, still clung stubbornly. Why to the morning's events? Holmes seemed invigorated rather than exhausted, and his sharp stride along the embankment betrayed a mind still racing through layers of deduction and consequence. Kimbu, now returned to a cupboard carrier, made occasional soft chirps that contrasted sharply with the anguished cries it had uttered in the warehouse. It seemed calmer, as though the shadow looming over its memory had been lifted.
Watson, I trust your ribs are intact despite Ashcombe's less than gentle greeting.
Tender, but functional. I've suffered worse in service at Myvern.
Good. You'll need to be in full command of your faculties for the remainder of this matter.
Holmes, pray tell, what remains? Ashcombe is arrested. His smuggling operations will be dismantled. The bird has fulfilled its remarkable purpose.
Holmes stopped beneath a lamplight, a faint glow casting precise angles onto his hawk-like profile. Come now, Watson, surely you do not believe that a man as calculating as Ashcombe operates without contingencies?
You suspect accomplices?
Suspect? No, I am certain. The question is not whether they exist, but how deeply entwined they are with the Foreign Office, and how eager they are to silence the final witness.
The witness? You mean Kimbu?
Precisely. A parrot may not be able to provide a legal deposition in court, but its ability to mimic the chieftain's dying confession renders it dangerously inconvenient to the guilty.
Holmes, are you suggesting we are still being watched?
Watson, I am suggesting we have been watched since the moment Kimbu first uttered the tribal accusation in Baker Street.
Shiver crawled along my spine despite the thick wool of my coat. Holmes resumed his brisk pace, and I struggled to keep up.
We shall return to Baker Street. There we will set the final trap.
The journey back was fraught with unease. I found myself checking each passing hansom cab, each shadow doorway, imagining hidden enemies lurking within the very heartbeat of London streets. It was only once we reached the familiar cobblestones of Baker Street that a semblance of safety returned, though Holmes seemed no more at ease than before.
Upstairs, Watson, and keep your revolver within reach.
Holmes, is an attack truly imminent?
If my calculations are correct, the accomplice will arrive within the hour. Go, but fear not, we shall be prepared.
Once inside our sitting room, Holmes instructed me to place the parrot's cage atop the table near the window. He then drew the curtains halfway, allowing only partial visibility of the room from outside.
Watson, position yourself behind the lacquered screen. I shall assume an attitude of contemplation here by the fireplace. The intruder will aim for me first.
Holmes, surely this is unnecessary. We could inform Lestrade. Taylor!
Lestrade, my dear fellow, he is undoubtedly occupied cataloguing every illicit item within that warehouse. By the time he arrived, our adversary would have vanished, leaving behind nothing but a broken window and a missing bird.
Dulling. With reluctance, I hid behind the screen, revolver drawn. Holmes sat in his armchair with casual poise, yet I could tell his senses were attuned to every whisper and movement in the air. For many tense minutes, nothing occurred. Kimbu shifted restlessly in its cage, tapping the wooden perch. Outside, a carriage clattered by, then another. The clock on the mantel chimed the quarter hour.
Patience, Watson. The web is set.
Suddenly, a faint scratching noise emanated from the window latch. Hum stiffened ever so slightly. I dared not breathe. The window lifted silently. A gloved hand appeared, followed by the silhouette of a figure clad in dark clothing and a mask. The intruder moved with the precision of a trained operative, not a common thief, but someone accustomed to infiltration.
The bird. Where's the bird?
Good evening. I believe you are seeking Kimbu.
Holmes spoke with such calm that the intruder momentarily froze. Then, with a swift lunge, the man produced a knife.
Sherlock Holmes, you leave me no choice.
Before he could reach Holmes, I emerged from hiding, revolver raised. Drop the weapon this instant.
Another step and the bird dies.
You overestimate your advantage, sir. You see, you have made 3 critical errors already.
What are you talking about?
First, you approached the window without checking the street. Rich informed me you act under time constraints. Second, your boots carry residue of red dyed laterite clay, the same we found in Ashcombe's warehouse, but mixed with London soot, meaning you have visited that location today. And third,
Holmes's hand shot out, knocking the knife from the intruder's grasp with surgical precision. The robe staggered backward, stunned.
you failed to anticipate that Watson's sense of duty rarely allows him to miss an opportunity to save my life.
I moved swiftly and pressed the revolver to the intruder's chest. Surrender now. You are outmatched.
You fools have no idea who I serve.
On the contrary, I know exactly who you serve. The emblem sewn into your cuff, partially torn, yet still visible, is from a private regiment operated under Ashcombe's patronage. You are the lieutenant he appointed to oversee the smuggling shipments.
Holmes, you should never have interfered.
And you should never have underestimated the consequences of murdering an African chieftain.
The intruder lunged suddenly, attempting to break past me, but Holmes intercepted him with a swift blow to the temple. The masked man collapsed to the floor, unconscious.
A most inelegant attempt. Watson, if you would be so kind as to restrain him.
I bound the man's wrists, while Holmes retrieved the fallen knife, examining it with clinical detail.
A ceremonial dagger, Ashanti in design, but crudely modified for stealth. This confirms he sought not merely to silence the bird, but to steal an artifact that might incriminate the entire network.
Holmes, is the danger finally past?
Yes, Watson, the final accomplice has revealed himself. With Ashcombe in custody and his lieutenant apprehended, the conspiracy is broken.
Kimbu chirped, then repeated the chieftain's final words once more. But this time, the tone sounded almost peaceful. The burden of its memory seemed at last to lift.
Watson, observe the creature carefully. You may learn something.
Holmes, what lesson could I possibly glean from a parrot?
The virtue of unwavering truth. Even when reduced to mimicry, the bird never altered a single syllable of its testimony. Many humans could aspire to such honesty.
You surprise me with your sentiment.
Nonsense. I speak only of the facts.
Harrington arrived shortly thereafter, breathless from the haste with which he had come. When he saw the bound intruder on our floor and Kimbu unharmed, his shoulders sagged with profound relief.
Holmes, I cannot thank you enough. You have avenged the chieftain. His memory, it will not be lost.
Ensure the proper authorities handle the aftermath, and see that Kimbu is returned to those who cherished him.
Of course, the tribe will want to honor him for his service.
After the intruder was taken away and Harrington departed with solemn gratitude, Holmes finally allowed himself to relax. He settled into his armchair, steepling his fingers as he gazed into the fire. Holmes, must every case end with such peril?
Peril, Watson, is merely the cost of confronting the truth. But I dare say this particular case possessed a curious charm.
Charm? Holmes, we were nearly killed.
Yes, but consider the intellectual elegance. A parrot bearing the dying words of a murdered chieftain. A conspiracy unraveled through logic, observation, and an avian witness. Few detectives can claim such unusual companions in the pursuit of justice.
Holmes, only you would raise a case for its oddity.
My dear Watson, oddity is often the hallmark of truth. The world disguises its crimes in conventional clothing. When something appears unique, that is when one should look most closely.
I sat opposite him, watching the fire flicker against the familiar clutter of our sitting room, the chemical vials, the scattered monographs, the violin resting quietly atop its table. Peace had returned, yet the memory of the day's dangers hummed softly beneath my skin. Holmes, what shall I record as the moral of this adventure?
Record that even the smallest voice, even the echo of a voice, can topple an empire built upon say it.
Kimbu let out a final chirp, turning its head as though acknowledging the great detective's words. And for a moment, as the warm glow of the hearth washed over us, I felt an uncommon tranquility. The case had begun with a cry of death from a distant land, and ended with justice restored, carried upon the wings of a creature whose loyalty transcended kingdoms. I opened my journal, inked my pen, and began to write the final lines. Holmes watched me, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Sir!
Do describe me generously, Watson. The public must have its hero.
Holmes, you require no embellishment. Your deeds speak plainly enough.
Then let us rest, Watson. Tomorrow, London will present new mysteries, and I dare say we shall need all our wits.
And so ended the adventure of the African parrot, an affair of treachery, truth, and the courage of a single exotic bird whose voice carried the weight of justice.